Joining us to discuss the current trends in our market, Denny Grimes, a 40-year veteran of real estate. His team has sold more than $1 billion worth of homes. Denny, thank you for joining us today.
Sure, my pleasure.
Now, for 25 years, you have been the keynote speaker of Market Watch. Now it's called Market Trends. It's the largest real estate forecasting event of its kind in the entire country. It's coming up next week in Fort Myers. First, can you help us understand how will lower mortgage rates impact our market, our buyers and our sellers?
Well, for those that have financed, I mean, obviously paying cash is not that big a deal, but for those that have financed, it makes the home more affordable. Everything revolves around affordability. Our market has done really well up until the time, of course, that it exploded during the COVID years. And then there's been a lot of talk about not only the higher interest rates, but then higher home prices. And then we had Hurricane Ian that led to higher insurance prices, which led to higher homeowners association prices and taxes. And so what happened is the affordability of Southwest Florida fell off a lot of people's radar because of all of those things combined. Now, the falling interest rates, which are hovered about 6%, was supposed to be the magic number. And it has increased buyer interest and buyer activity. And there are still some buyers out there waiting for something that probably will never happen. And that's that 3 or 4% interest rate that we had a few years ago.
Can you tell us what's going on in Lehigh? It's normally viewed as a pretty affordable area for people living and working east of 75, but I understand at least 3 homes have hit the market recently, priced at over $1 million. Unheard of. What's going on with this?
Well, there's a saying in real estate that time solves all problems. And I remember, I don't know if it was 2020 or not, I've been selling homes in Southwest Florida for 40 years, but there was a day when Cape Coral had its first $1 million sale and everybody was celebrating. Well, last year, about 250 homes sold in Cape Coral over $1 million. So it's not kind of old hat. Now, the new kid in town, when we're talking about those 7-figure homes, is in Lehigh. The very first sale of a 7-figure home, just over $1 million, took place last year, Jennifer. And this year, there are 3 homes on the market currently over $1 million, one as much as $1.5 million.
What is driving this? What's your perspective on that?
Well, like I said, time solves all problems. And so what I think is going on there, Lehigh is still affordable. And it will probably remain affordable. It's probably one of the most affordable areas in the county. Now, you mentioned the Market Trend program, which is coming up next week. We're going to be talking about a lot of new developments that are heading out on State Road 82 all the way out towards 29. And so where Lehigh used to appear kind of like way out, it's going to become more central. And what's happening there in Lehigh and as the demographics is that roughly 60%, or maybe just over 60% of the demographics there are Latin or Latino or Hispanic. And so what happens is they're family oriented. So people like to live next to their families. And so what's happening is you're starting to see the price range spread a little bit. And you are finding pockets of homes that are much larger and more expensive than the median, probably because they want to be around their family.
Very interesting. I'm so excited to look forward and see what is going to be happening in the future out in that corridor, especially out in Lehigh. Now, Cape Coral, as we know, has been the focus of multiple national articles with dismal news calling it the worst housing market in the entire country. Can you share your expertise on the Cape Coral housing market as a local realtor for 40 years you've been in the area? What is your perspective?
Well, that all stemmed this past summer. Wall Street Journal wrote an article called Cape Coral the worst market in the country, and it gave an example of why. Now, you're in journalism, so you know there's always a story, but then there's the story. That whole article is based on a story. They talked about someone who bought after the COVID years, after the peak of the market. And they had their home on the market, and basically because they paid more for it, and they wanted to get a certain price, the market didn't accept the price, so they had to lower the price quite a bit in order for it to sell. And so they're taking that as a story, saying that, well, all these sellers in Cape Coral have to lower their price considerably in order to sell. Well, that's not the story. The story is that home prices are up, and I have the data. Home prices are up double digits from 2019, which was just before COVID. So in reality, homeowners in Cape Coral and all of Southwest Florida have plenty of equity if they've owned prior to 2022. People who bought after 2022 because the market's starting to correct right now, they're what we call kind of upside down. So that's what the Wall Street Journal focused on. And when I saw that, I happened to get on Facebook, and I don't get on it that often. And I gave them the rebuttal, and my rebuttal kind of went viral because a lot of people needed to hear the story of Southwest Florida. The story in the real estate market in Southwest Florida when it comes to residential is our market is healing because it exploded during COVID. We had 2 years, or actually 15 months, of irrational growth that could not be sustained. Now our market is coming back down to earth. Yes, that means lowering prices, but they're still well above rational values.
Denny, our area is also, as you know, very appealing to international buyers. We have all been watching the news with the war with Iran, and it has impacted the stock market, gas prices, travel, and so many other aspects that we aren't even sure of yet. Do you foresee the war in Iran impacting our Southwest Florida real estate market at all?
Well, like it's like a couple of days old, and I know the stock market, responds by the nanosecond. Oil prices the same way. The real estate market doesn't quite move like that. It's not as volatile. And again, at its current level, and if it doesn't escalate and become something bigger than that, we don't have a lot of issues here. I don't think it's going to have any effect whatsoever on the real estate market. And you would expect a real estate agent to say that, but I've got the reputation of playing it down the middle. I'll tell you what I think, and even if it's contrary to what the typical realtor speak is, I don't think it's going to be an issue.
You also told me you're working on a book that's going to be published hopefully by the end of the year. Can you tell me more about the book, the title? What is it about?
Well, I have over my career probably somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 sales. However, I have probably 20 some or 30 some thousand transactions that I wasn't successful at. And so what I've done is taken all those learning lessons, Jennifer, and put it into a book that basically will help somebody else that's maybe struggling in real estate, or maybe somebody who wants to start out with maybe reading some mastery level concepts, so they don't have to go through the messes and the transactions and the failures that I went through. So that's my goal. Technically, or at least initially, it's called The Mastery of Real Estate, but I'm sure it'll have a much more sexy title when it comes out.
Well, we look forward to having you back on the show soon, and hopefully we can also talk more about your book in the future. Thank you so much for your expertise and your time today, Denny.
My pleasure.